I'm Clare Norton, University Director of Admission at CUNY.
And I'm Jim Murphy. I'm the University Dean for Enrollment.
And we are here tonight to talk about the Excelsior Scholarship. But first, just to introduce CUNY. CUNY is the largest urban university and a really fabulous resource to the city of New York. We have 20 undergraduate colleges and about 275,000 matriculated students. And so hopefully, if you haven't already explored CUNY, you'll go to cuny.edu/explore to learn more about the wide variety of opportunities available at the university. But tonight, we are going to talk about Governor Cuomo's groundbreaking Excelsior Scholarship. So let's start with the most obvious question, Jim. First of all, what is the Excelsior Scholarship?
Well, the Excelsior Scholarship is an initiative, in fact, like you said, a groundbreaking initiative of Governor Cuomo's, which in combination with other student, federal, and state financial aid, as well as institutional financial aid, allows a student to attend a CUNY or SUNY school tuition-free. I'll just add that currently, 57% of all in-state undergraduate students attend a CUNY college tuition fee, thanks for the current federal aid. So we're really excited about the Excelsior Scholarship and the potential for even more students to attend tuition-free.
I think it would probably be helpful if we provided an overview of the program so that folks, and I should have mentioned, but we're really hoping that you'll be providing us with your questions so that we can respond to those. So as we're going along, please let us know what you are hoping to learn more about tonight. In terms of overview, first question, who's eligible to receive the scholarship?
Well, for the 2017-18 academic year, students who are New York State residents with a family adjusted gross income, that's a federal adjusted gross income, of $100,000 or less, who attend full-time are eligible for the scholarship. They must complete 30 credits to remain eligible for the scholarship over the course of the year.
Excellent. So what are the requirements for the scholarship, or what do you have to do to receive the award and then keep the award?
Well, as I said before, you have to register as a full-time student and successfully complete 30 credits per year, including winter and summer. A lot of students prefer to take 12 credits in the fall and 12 credits in the spring. They could take credits in the winter and summer semester. Unfortunately, in the winter and summer, they would have to pay for the credits themselves. But those credits would be able to be applied to the 30 credit limit, so they'd be able to continue to receive the award. And they have to complete an Excelsior application before July 21st, and also complete the federal FAFSA application and a TAP application before July 21st. In addition, they will have to sign a promissory note agreeing to live and work in New York State for the number of years they receive the Excelsior Scholarship. So if they receive the Excelsior Scholarship for 3 years, they would be required to live and work in New York State for those 3 years, and for 3 years thereafter.
And correct me if this is wrong, but you should really complete the FAFSA and the TAP first, and then the Excelsior Scholarship application?
Well, actually, it really doesn't make a difference. However, because we're getting so close to the July 21st deadline, I would certainly work quickly to complete all the applications.
And someone asked us, if I'm a uprising junior in high school, is this a scholarship that I can apply for?
You can't apply for it for this year, but you will be able to apply for it to attend CUNY or SUNY for the 2018-2019 academic year.
Okay, so we're back. We had a few technical difficulties. Sorry. Hope you're still with us. So we were talking about what you need to do in order to receive the Excelsior Scholarship. Kind of what are the requirements? What do you have to do in order to receive the award and keep the award? So in case we kind of cut out in the middle of that question, we'll start there again.
So let me start over with that then. So you need to be a full-time student, which means registering for 12 credits a semester, but you also need to complete 30 credits an academic year. So many students take 12 credits in the fall and the spring, and that would only equal 24. They can take credits in the winter and the summer sessions, but they'd have to pay for those credits themselves. They would have to complete a FAFSA and TAP application prior to July 21st, to be eligible for the Excelsior, and they would have to complete the Excelsior application before July 21st. It doesn't matter which order you complete them in, but since today is already the 13th, you only have 8 more days to complete the application. You also have to sign a promissory note agreeing to live and work in New York State for the period of time equal to the number of years you receive the Excelsior Scholarship. So if you receive the scholarship for 3 years, after you graduate, you have to remain in New York for 3 years and work in New York for 3 years.
But you don't have to work. So
if you happen to hit lottery and don't have to work, as long as you're still living in New York, you're eligible to
right.
To keep the award. If you do not stay in New York, then the Excelsior Scholarship, the amount of the Excelsior Scholarship for the years that you did not remain in New York becomes a student loan.
Got it. Okay. And how long can you receive the award for?
Students can receive up to 8 semesters of the Excelsior Award, beginning with the first semester they attended college and lasting for 4 years. There are some exceptions to that. Certainly for students with disabilities, students who have some kind of requested and approved leave. But basically, the purpose of the scholarship is to have students graduate in 4 years. So the scholarship lasts 8 semesters or 4 years from your first semester that you begin college.
And if you're a year or 2 in, that would mean that you have only 2
or
years
3 years left, yes.
Right, yeah. So somebody asked a question that I was going to ask about the fact that I've seen Excelsior referred to as a last dollar scholarship and what that means. And sort of along with that, we got a question about, do you still need to apply if TAP covers everything? So
well, you don't need to apply if TAP covers everything, because your TAP is paying your tuition and you wouldn't get any of the Excelsior Scholarship. However, a last dollar scholarship means that we take the tuition and we subtract all federal, state, and institutional aid from that from the tuition, and the balance, if you're eligible, would be paid for by the Excelsior Scholarship. The only exception to that is grants or scholarships that are specifically for some other purposes. For instance, sometimes students receive a housing scholarship or a housing grant. That would not be used in the calculation of the Excelsior Scholarship.
And since you were saying that the deadline to complete the application is quickly approaching, let's talk a little bit more about how to apply and what information a student needs to have at their disposal in order to apply. So can you explain, first of all, just how do you find this application?
Well, the application is on the website of the New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, who administers the program for the state, and their website is, of course, www.hesc.ny.gov, and you can go on there and click on the Excelsior Scholarship. You would need your 2015, of course, for the 2017-2018 year, we're using the 2015 income, so you would need your 2015 income tax form, federal income tax form.
Is there anything that you could do to sort of prepare before you file for the application?
HESC, again, the New York State Higher Education Services Corporation, has prepared an application tip sheet, which you can find on the website. Again, hesc.ny.gov, and you do a /Excelsior. It should take you right to the page with the tip sheet and the application.
And also, I have noted that they have a technology helpline there and a live chat capability. So if students are having any difficulty with actually completing the application or uploading the supporting documents, they can get some help there. So let's talk more about eligibility and really what it means to be a student who can actually receive this scholarship. So first of all, you mentioned that you have to be a New York State resident. I mean, how do we define New York State resident for this scholarship?
Well, to be a New York State resident, you have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, or a category of other eligible non-citizens, which usually refers to students here on some kind of visa, temporary or permanent visa. But basically here to stay. Students on F1 visas and unfortunately undocumented students and students on work visas are not eligible. They have to live in New York State for 12 continuous months prior to the beginning of the first semester they're going to receive the Excelsior scholarships. If your parents reside here for 12 months at the time, because you're dependent upon your parent, you will have met the requirement to be a New York State resident.
So, like, for instance, and we'll get into transfer students in a little bit, but if, you happen to be going to school outside of New York State, but you're a dependent of your parents and they've been here for the last 12 months,
Right.
then you would still be considered a New
And
York State resident.
certainly that's going to, students who go to a college outside New York State and transfer to a CUNY or SUNY school would still be considered New York State residents if their parents had remained a residents at that time.
Excellent. Okay. So this sort of gives that away a little bit, but so you don't have to be a new college freshman to get this scholarship.
No,
this
transfer
year.
students are eligible. The transfer students would have had to complete 30 credits per year at their previous institution and have those credits applied to their degree.
Or students who are currently enrolled. So you don't have to be transferring.
Correct. Students who are currently enrolled also would have had to complete 30 credits per year in order to be eligible for the scholarship. So if a student who began, let's just say for the sake of an argument, in the fall of 2015, they would have to have completed 60 credits in order to receive it for the fall of 17.
And what about if you're interested in pursuing a second degree? So you've already earned an associate's degree, but you want another associate's degree. You've already earned a bachelor's degree, but you'd like another bachelor's degree. Would you be eligible for the scholarship in that case?
If a student received an associate's degree, they would be eligible to receive it for 2 years to receive a bachelor's degree. However, unfortunately, students who received the bachelor's degree previously would be ineligible to receive the Excelsior scholarship.
Okay, so only for your first time doing either. All right, so you've talked a lot about the fact that this is meant to keep students on track to graduation and that therefore they have to earn a certain number of credits per term. So let's talk a bit more about how the credits will apply. So if students have to take skills building or remedial coursework, are those students going to be eligible to receive the scholarship?
Yes, excuse me. Students taking remedial courses are eligible to apply. However, they still need to complete 30 credits over the course of the academic year. So if they take 9 credits and 3 remedial hours in the fall semester, it would be advisable for them to take courses in the winter session and again, in the summer session in order to make up the 30 credits. They still must complete those 30 credits over the course of the year, and the remedial credits would not count towards those credits, although they do count towards full-time status.
Right, okay. What about if you started college in January of this year? So you're just in your you've done one semester and you only did 12 credits.
You have to complete 30 credits over the course of the year from the first semester you started college. So they would have to have 30 credits completed by the end of December of 2017 in order to continue to receive it in 2018,
Okay.
spring of 2018.
We had someone say, what about if you start college with AP credits? So in their case, they said, what about if you have 9 AP credits and you complete 21 credits in the fall and spring? Are you eligible?
So the AP credits, the best way to explain this is the AP credits would count towards your credit limit at any level. So if you started with 9 credits and you only completed 24 credits your first semester, but you had 9 credits worth of AP, 6 of those credits would be applied for that semester. And then if for that year. And if you completed 27 credits your following semester, you still have 3 AP credits that you have not used that will be applied at that point in time. So you would still have completed the 60 credits by the beginning of your third year of school.
Okay. Oh, so like if I came in with 12 credits, I could complete 27 credits a year for 4 years
That's
and
correct.
use 3 every time and have
correct,
that
yes.
bring you up to speed. And that's not just AP, also IB credits if
College
they transfer
Now.
College Now, any college credit coursework students might have taken.
That's correct.
Okay.
As long as they apply towards the degree, I want to, the courses must apply towards the degree.
Right. Okay. Understood. And what about students who are DACA students? Would they be eligible to receive the scholarship?
Unfortunately, students who are DACA students are not eligible to receive the scholarship. There has been a lot of movement in New York State in order to allow undocumented students and DACA students to receive the TAP program, funds from the TAP program. That has not passed. despite the best efforts of many of our political leaders. But unfortunately, for this coming year, they would not be eligible.
Okay. Now, what happens if you receive the scholarship and you fail to meet that 30 credits in the first year? Can you become eligible again, or how does that work?
Well, you would if you did not complete the 30 credits in the first year, you would unfortunately lose your second payment. So you would have to repay your tuition for, in this case, the spring semester. And once you lose it for academic purposes, you lose it for academic purposes. However, if you receive the scholarship your first year because your income is under $100,000, and the second year your income is over the second year limit of $110,000, and you would not receive the award, you could get it back if in the third year your family income was below $125,000, which would be the third year limit. You could get it back, but once you lose it for academic purposes, you've lost it forever. And that's the same for all scholarships. This is
right.
It's very difficult to get any scholarship back once you lose it.
Yeah. Are there special circumstances that'll impact the 30 credit requirement in terms of being able to finish the degree in 2 or 4 years?
Yes, there are circumstances that could allow a student to complete less than 30 credits a year. Students with disabilities comes to mind. They're very flexible when it comes to students with disabilities, and I don't think any student in that category would have a trouble if they receiving the award. It would be a prorated award, and they would have more than 8 semesters of eligibility because they'd be receiving a smaller award each year. They would have to complete 120 credits, eventually, but still they would still have to live in New York State, but they would only have to live and work in New York State for up to 4 years because they only received the equivalent of 4 years of scholarship, even though it's spread out over time.
What about programs like SEEK and College Discovery or opportunity programs at SUNY?
Those students actually have 5 years to receive the Excelsior Scholarship, and they only have to complete 24 credits a year, which is a little different than students in a 5-year degree program. Many pharmacy programs across the state are 5-year programs. Those students would have a 5 years of eligibility, but they still would have to complete 30 credits per year.
Right, because that's a 150 credit program.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. And what about if you have some kind of family or health situation that causes you to need to take a leave of absence from school?
You can apply for a leave of absence, and the way leave of absences work, unfortunately, very few people foresee that they're going to have to take a leave. It happens at the last minute, and the leave is not approved. Back when I was in college, when you took a leave of absence, you had to file paperwork prior to the leave. But now everybody files the paperwork as they're coming back. So the Excelsior Scholarship would allow the student who's coming back to tell us why they had to step out for a semester or two, and they could and if it's approved, if it's an approved reason, for instance, a death in a family, a need to work because somebody lost their job or a sickness or something like that, then they would just take up where they left off with the Excelsior Scholarship.
Excellent. So you've started to talk a little bit about also this kind of post-award obligation that requires the student to live and, if applicable, work in New York State for a period that's equal to the number of years that they received the scholarship. When does that requirement begin?
So it would usually begin when the student graduates from college or leaves college. A lot of students leave college before they graduate. And it would last for the number of years they received the scholarship. So if they received the scholarship for 4 years, they would have to live and work in New York for 4 years. If they received it for 2 years, they'd have to live and work in New York for 2 years. However, if a student goes on to graduate school, it would start after they graduated from graduate school. If the student decides to go to graduate school in, say, California, then it would begin 6 months after they leave the graduate school in California. They would have to move back to the New York State area, and then remain here for the number of years they received the Excelsior Scholarship.
He's so good that he just answered the question I was about to read that you just posted, so well done. And does the entire award convert to a loan if you move out of New York State?
No, it does not. Only for the number of years that you did, if you moved out, the number of years you left New York State for. So if you're receiving if you receive the Excelsior Scholarship for 4 years and you remain in New York State for 2 years and work in New York State for 2 years, then the final 2 years would turn into a loan.
Okay. What about in terms of kind of eligibility? People are interested in knowing if there's an age limit. So if it's your first time attending college and you're over 30, do you still qualify?
If it's your first time attending college, you would qualify even if you're over 30.
And if you didn't work in 2015, would you need to provide a non-filing transcript?
No, New York State can actually verify who's filed tax returns and who has not filed tax returns.
Okay. So you talked about this a little bit, but there's a question about students with disabilities again. So can they have part-time status and be eligible?
Yes, they certainly can have part-time status and be eligible. They can take 3 credits and be eligible, or 6 or 9, yes.
And when you file the application, particularly if you're filing as a transfer student, there's a request for some supporting academic documents, right? What are those?
Well, you need to supply a student copy of your academic transcript to the application. That actually has to be uploaded to the application by July 30th, so you get a little bit after the July 21st deadline to do that. And you also have to upload your Institutional Student Aid Report, ISAR as it's called, which is the information you get back after you file the FAFSA form. Those 2 things have to be uploaded to the application, and you have, again, till July 30th, as long as you file the application before July 21st.
Okay. If your award should convert to a loan, do we know what the interest on that loan is going to be?
It's interest-free, the loan. You don't have to pay any interest on the loan.
Excellent. And somebody also said, what about if they have existing student loans? Does this have any impact?
It has no impact on existing student loans. I know a number of people have asked if they can apply it towards their existing student's loan to pay their existing student loans. Unfortunately, they can't. It's not retroactive.
Right. You start getting it now, but
yes.
You can't turn back the clock. Another question about whether you can apply for 2018 now.
No, you cannot apply for 2018 now. There'll be a filing period next year. This year, the filing period was late, June 7th to July 21st, because the program was only approved in April, and they had to develop the application and the process. Next year, we would anticipate that the application period would start sooner. In addition, right now, there is no application period for the spring semester. It's my understanding there will be an application period probably in November or early December for the spring application period.
So people who are filing the application now are only those students who are going to use the scholarship this fall to be enrolled at
However,
uni.
well, if you intend to go to school for the spring, you can file the application right now for the spring, and it would apply for the spring. Unfortunately, many students who are going to go in the spring semester are not thinking about filing the application now. So, again, we believe, and I strongly believe, that there will be a filing period for students to apply for the spring semester.
So what's the best way then to kind of keep aware of what's happening if you're a student who's not filing now, but you'd be filing in the future?
Well, one of the things you could do is we have an Excelsior web page on our CUNY homepage, www.cuny.edu, and not only can you look at information on the Excelsior Scholarship, there have been a lot of questions and answers posted on that page, and you certainly can go on that page if you have a question that you were not able to ask tonight. You can post it to that page, and we will answer the question for you.
Excellent. Fabulous. Looks like we maybe have a couple other questions coming in, so we're going to take a quick second to take a look at those. But in the interim, I think it's worthwhile pointing out again that there are some really fabulous resources on the HESC website as well. I think, they have a fact sheet that really goes over eligibility. They have a tip sheet that helps prepare you for some of the questions on the application that they discovered that some students found to be a little bit tricky. So those are things definitely worth taking a look at before you apply, if you haven't applied already. So again, if I'm an upcoming junior in high school, then when is it that I'm going to apply for the scholarship?
You're going to apply for it next spring. Hopefully, when you start applying for, you'll start applying for financial aid for the 2018-2019 academic year in October. I do not believe the Excelsior scholarship will be available by then, but certainly it'll be available by April 1st.
Great. And when do you find out if you get the scholarship?
The information HESC is trying to turn around award notice as quickly as possible. It doesn't always work as quickly as they'd like to for a lot of reasons. But I would say probably within 2 to 3 weeks after you applied, you should receive a notice, and it certainly should receive it by the time you're ready to pay your bill.
And are you receiving that notice from HESC or from your CUNY college?
You'll receive a notice from HESC telling you you're eligible. The amount you're eligible for will be determined by the college.
Excellent. Okay. And what about if you've applied, is there something you should do just to be sure that everything that's needed has been submitted?
Well, you can look at the website. I can tell you the status of the application. The HESC website can tell you the status of the application.
So a good idea before the July 21st deadline, just to be sure
yes.
that you've submitted what's needed.
Right.
A question again on if the scholarship should become a loan. Do we know who is the loan server?
The loan server will be HESC. And I can't emphasize this enough. You really need to apply for this scholarship in the next 8 days. Currently, there are over 60,000 applicants statewide. About 20,000 of them are from CUNY, and the remainder are from SUNY students. And it's for students whose family income is below $100,000 a year, who attend college full-time. They could be incoming freshmen or continuing students, but if you're a continuing student, you have to complete 30 credits per year. You have to be a New York State resident or permanent, you have to be a New York State resident, as well as a U.S. citizen or permanent resident to receive the award. And I would strongly encourage everyone to apply for it. If you don't apply for it, you're not eligible. If you do apply for it, you could be eligible.
Right. Definitely worth the chance. Absolutely. I think another point that's important to keep in mind is, let's say your family makes, more than 100,000, but less than that 110 or less than that 125,000. It's really important then that in the upcoming academic year, you take and complete those 30 credits so that as the financial eligibility for the scholarship increases, you'll still be academically eligible in addition to financially eligible, and you have to meet both of those
That's
requirements.
a good point, Claire. Yes, you do have to meet those requirements, and we would encourage all students to try to complete 30 credits per year, either during the academic year or in winter or summer session.
This particular student has a tricky one in that the college that they're transferring from only issues 1 credit per course. Will that be taken into consideration if their application is reviewed?
So students who transfer from colleges that only give 1 credit per course, the receiving college will evaluate the course and determine the number of credits it would be they'd be eligible for at the college at the receiving college. Usually, it's the other way around. A sending college has a 4-credit course, and when it converts to the receiving college, it turns out it's a 3-credit course. It depends on how the receiving college evaluates it, not how the sending college evaluates it.
Perfect. So in this student's case, once they know which CUNY or SUNY college they're attending, that college will say, oh, you took a math course at your college for which you got 1 credit, and we consider that a 3-credit math course at our college.
They took 10 1-credit courses. It will probably equal 30 credits.
Do we know is there a minimum GPA for a student to qualify for this program?
Excellent point. I don't know how I missed that. That's an excellent question. The student has to have grades that allow the course to be applied towards a degree. Most colleges a D or better qualifies towards a degree. However, there are some programs, such as nursing, where you may have to complete a course with a C grade, and then the student will be required to have a C grade in that course. As long as the college accepts the credit for that course towards the student's degree, they would be eligible.
Okay, so kind of generically that means likely 2.0 or better, but it does depend on what your major
is. Student could get 5 Ds with a 1.0 GPA and be eligible.
And potentially still remain eligible. Of course, then it's hard to keep moving on, so we want you to be earning the strongest possible grades.
That's
correct. But certainly. When we say family income, who do we mean? Parents, siblings, themselves?
Parents and students' income, not siblings. If the siblings have their own job, that's not used to determine the eligibility. It's the same same income definition as we use for TAP and Pell.
Excellent. Okay, so we hope that this has been a useful way to spend a little time this evening. Again, we encourage you to visit our CUNY website for more information, as well as to visit the HESC website, which again is hesc.ny.gov/Excelsior, so that you can learn more. They have the ability even for you to sign up there to get more information from them as additional details become available. So if you're a student who will be applying a few years down the line, you can join their mailing list and make sure that you have the most up-to-date information. So we hope that you will be exploring the opportunities that this provides for you to complete your degree with us at CUNY. And we will see you the next time that we are here on Facebook Live. Have a great night.